Ruslan.
I am here today with a special guest, Pastor Roy Dockery, and we are going to be talking a little bit about leadership, President Zelensky, and what we've seen, react to a couple clips, and then the Africans in Ukraine situation that is not a good look. But before we get into that, Pastor Roy Dockery, can you introduce everybody to who you are real quick?
Yeah, I'm Pastor Roy Dockery from YouTube and from the Savage Truth podcast, also the Savage Truth Discord community and Patreon. Yeah, so YouTuber, local pastor, healthcare technology executive, Christian rapper, you know, all of that.
So, first of all, before we get into President Zelensky, there is some stuff coming out that's pretty troubling about thousands of African students. Let me see if I can pull this up. Thousands of African students who went to Ukraine to train to become, this is from Insider, to become doctors and engineers scramble to escape the Russian offensive. And it looks wild. People wait to board on an evacuation train from Kyiv to Kyiv Central Station, and this is February 25th. Ukraine is home to thousands of African students who come to study at affordable prices. Now they are trapped by the lightning Russian military invasion. Some embassies told the students to save themselves as they could not help. Pastor Roy Dockery, what have you seen about this story online? It seems, I initially thought this could be Russian disinformation as the world seemingly is standing with President Zelensky and just him kind of stepping up as a leader. And we're going to look at some of that. What did you hear about this? What have you learned about this? What's going on with this?
Yeah, so what we're seeing is you see this like hashtag Africans in Ukraine that's trending on Twitter, right? And it's like, okay, we got all this stuff going on in the world and we got to deal with anti-blackness in the Ukraine. So what it appears, right, is that there are people, multiple different places that are trying to travel across Ukraine to get to the Polish border. And it seems like people, and what they're saying is that people are being denied access to the train. You see some clips there, they're pushing people off the train. Some of the debate that's been coming out is that they're trying to prioritize Ukrainian citizens. But it look a little suspect, right? Because if everybody in Ukraine is white and then all the African students and families are black, it looks like you're prioritizing people based on color, not by nationality or passport status. Yeah. So it's just it's a little dicey. So I know like Viola Davis had got out there, and so they're trying to spread information. And even if anybody knows anybody from Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Africa, there's a lot of information circulating now on Twitter under that hashtag of how they can call their embassies. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the African embassies are stepping in to try to send buses. You see that right there, right? Nigerians leaving Ukraine. And so there's a lot of dynamics there. So I think it's some logistic stuff, right? But it also, it doesn't look good from an optics perspective because, like, you know, you just see all of these images, right, of trains leaving, basically war zones or potentially violent places, and then just Africans being stuck and stranded at the train stations.
Yeah, and it's hard to gauge. Is this Poland rejecting Africans? Is this a logistics issue? Is this men, children first and then, women and children first and then men? Or is it women, children, Ukrainian citizens, which all happen to be white, and then the non-Ukraine? Like, it is absolutely not a good look from an optic standpoint, especially at a time where the world seems to be standing with Zelensky. So we wanted to just address that up front. Because it's also possible that this could be Russian disinformation. Because look, I just did my 23andMe test. I'm 52% Russian, possibly Ukrainian, but probably Russian. And let me tell you, my people is swift with the propaganda. They'll spin some stuff for you and make it look all types of crazy. I think they did a study. I don't know if you heard about this, Pastor Roy, but they did a study and they found out that like the vast majority of Christian Facebook pages were ran by Russian farms.
Yep. Yeah.
So my people, listen, and I'm not condoning it. I'm saying my people are savage, and this could be disinformation. I don't know, because it is the optics of it look terrible. The timing of it is bad. Somebody said doing some digging about what Putin has said of Nazis in Ukraine. Yes, actually, he is right. Ukraine is a major neo-Nazi spot. Listen, there's neo-Nazis everywhere, right? That's the truth. I don't know if Ukraine institutionally is on this energy or if this is specific people in specific pockets. It's really hard to tell. What are you thinking about when you just see this? What is your thoughts and just the little bit of information that we have, Pastor Roy?
Yeah, I think, right, when you're trying to navigate a crisis in general, right, I think there's going to be missteps, right? And we had talked a little bit earlier, right? Like the U.S. told people to start getting out of the Ukraine like last week, right? U.S. citizens. So I think that there's a run on the train stations, right? It seems to be, there was even some stuff people are getting into Poland. It doesn't look like Poland's denying people access. And there's just an influx of people there. So it's not a good look. And from a leadership perspective, which we'll talk about more, right? We have to be mindful of how the decisions carry through all the way down to execution. So even if somebody in government, even not President Zelensky, said, hey, we're going to prioritize, citizens or women and children, if you don't communicate that publicly,
right,
and then you have a run on the train station, that's a problem with communication, right? That creates a logistics nightmare and puts your police officers in a space, right, where they're now fighting with people trying to get on trains because they didn't understand the priority of evacuation, right? So I think, it seems like it's being managed, right? The world's responding and there's visibility. If there's discrimination, it obviously needs to be dealt with. But I feel like, right, once there's clarity in the communication and what's going on, the embassies of the African nations are stepping up and sharing information and saying, hey, this is who you call, this is how you get to the consulate to get approval to get into Poland. So there's that side of it, right? That's a transition. You're immigrating to a different country. So there's some work that has to be done with the embassies. But I think it's a lot going on right now. And when it comes down, it'll be some, when it washes all out, right? It'll be communication and a lot of things with logistics and I mean, honestly, probably some bias, right? Like if you're a Ukrainian soldier or police officer, you probably want Ukrainians to get out the country.
Right.
Right. We all have our biases, and some of those biases are cultural, ethnic, racial. I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
We live in America. We can't act like biases don't exist.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So we just want to make sure we address that. Now let's talk about the situation in Kyiv. Pastor Roy Dockery, awesome rock star leader. This is kind of his wheelhouse. And we saw some things over the past couple of days that I wanted to highlight that I think just to me speak of leadership. Of someone that was initially a comedy guy, entertainment guy, and stepping up and really fighting off on some David and Goliath type energy. So if you guys don't know what's been going on, the president of Ukraine decided to stay in the capital and fight for his people. So he says the president is here, the head of president's here, prime minister's here. Everyone's here. We're all here. Our troops are here. Our citizens are here. All of us are protecting our independence of our country. And it will continue to be this way. So he stands back, and what seems to be happening is that this man and the folks that stood there, and I'll show you guys another clip real quick.
Different understanding what happening Russian aggression in Ukraine and about how brave and heroic is Ukrainian to protect our soil, to protect our future, to protect our freedom and our democracy. We are in the center of Kyiv. We are here to protect Ukraine. Is about a little bit more than 2 kilometers from here. This is very difficult to explain. What does it mean in the 21st century, in the middle of Europe, to be awakened by the Russian missile attack, by the Russian air bomb attack, when the people are shouting, and this is the civilian who is suffering a lot from the disastrous Russian aggression. First of all, I would like to thank West for support, because this is the great demonstration that Ukrainian people are not alone. And the only scene of Ukrainian people is just, we want to be free. We want to be democratic, and we want to return back our country to the European family. And with that situation, we have a Putin who hate Ukraine and hate Ukrainian. And with that situation, he launched an aggression. And
yeah, this is the former president, and this is him on the front lines, like holding down the fort. What are you making of this, Pastor Roy Dockery?
I think it's crazy when you talk about leadership, right? Because we always talk about leading by example, and I think in our country we've kind of, I don't know if that's been significantly diminished or what that is, right? Because we kind of we've got military leaders, right? We've got business leaders, like we've got these different categories of leaders that I think we kind of elevate. But I think it's amazing that in this space, right, especially in that previous video where he literally was like, my whole team is here. He basically got on camera and was like, the squad didn't go nowhere. So the prime minister, where, I mean, I know we have evacuation plans. I'm ex-military, right? There's evacuation plans for key leaders, and like we would be getting people out of there. And you know, trying to get them to safety and letting the military handle it. But knowing, right, especially in this space with Ukraine, that they're basically activating and enlisting almost all adult men, right, at this time. I think it's phenomenal for the leadership of the president to step up and said, I'm going to fight with you. So I'm not just going to ask you to enlist your sons, which are things we've done in wars in our country, right? Like send your children, but my kids have heel spurs, right? But you know, so in that regard, I think it's a way to lead by example, right? And to put yourself in the same level of risk or concern that you're asking other people to be in, right? So not asking somebody to do what you're not willing to do yourself.
Yeah, I think you're totally spot on, man. And I think when we see this sort of desire to not just like, yo, we want to remain democratic. No. You're trying to come in and you think this is going to be a simple operation. It's not going to be a simple operation. And we're fighting for like the independence of our country, our democracy, our ethnic identity to be distinguished, to be a part of Europe and with a different future. I think it seems like, and you could speak to this if you want, Pastor Roy, but it seems like Putin underestimated how much these people were willing to stand and fight for their country. Like, I think he thought it was going to be like, these folks, they want to be part of Russia anyway, bring back old Soviet glory, right? And these folks are like, nah, like, we're not leaving. So they're handing out firearms, to anybody who's over 14. And they did not, I don't think the Russians anticipated this level of pushback. And that is why I think Kyiv, the capital, is still standing, is because of the leadership. What do you think, Pastor Roy?
Yeah, and I think that's true, right? Because maybe you underestimate either complacency, right, or whatever kind of that kind of brotherhood that they talk about between Russia and Ukraine. Like some people still feel connected to the Soviets or to Russia as kind of a construct, and maybe it was less than he expected, right? And so when the leaders started to mobilize, and I think it really helped, and we talked about this, that there was a lot of information and intelligence that was communicated that countered the disinformation. So if Putin would have been able to effectively say, this is an American ploy, right? This is the West trying to separate us, right? We're just doing exercises. We're really not attacking you. Like, because he couldn't use that, because they kept providing counterintelligence to it. I think it put him in a position where he just had to be the aggressor, right? He wasn't provoked. There wasn't some kind of geopolitical situation, right? Like he just started descending on Ukraine all of a sudden out of nowhere. So I think that probably lost him more momentum than he thought it would gain. Because I really think that they would have tried to use kind of information and other tactics other than all out aggression, but it got countered with intelligence like earlier in the year, right? So that the West and other European allies have been saying like, look, they're going to attack. They're going to attack. They're going to attack. And I mean, he was denying it, right? Like a week and a half ago. No, we're just doing exercises. We're just kicking it in Belarus, right? We're not going to attack the Ukraine. And then you start shooting missiles. So it's like, I think he lost some credibility.
I mean, shooting missiles into residential areas.
Yeah. And
like
I think you lose credibility, right, with your audience in Ukraine that may have been supportive, right? And then on top of that, right, you're attacking civilians. That the way that mobilizes citizens under proper leadership is something. Yeah, because like I know that they got they had got like one of the airports in Kyiv, and then they got the airport back, right? So like that resilience is probably something that wasn't counted on. And then and obviously some of the countries in the EU, right, got away from their ban on weapons and also started sending them more artillery.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna get to weapons in a second here. Let's watch the rest of this clip because we're gonna talk about some real deal stuff here in a second.
For the last 72 hours, more than 3,000 Russians were killed. More than 20 planes were hit.
So you're saying in the last 72 hours, 3,000 casualties suffered on the Russian side of things. And there's videos all over of Russian troops getting jammed up, hands tied behind their back, saying like, yo, we thought we were just doing demonstrations or what they call trainings or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And they're like, and then they tricked us and said like, yeah, you got to go in now. And so it seems very wild.
And 100 tanks were destroyed, and more than 1,000 armed personnel carrier was destroyed. And this is the demonstration how Ukrainian army, how Ukrainian soldiers, and how Ukrainian people is absolutely break Putin's scenario of blitzkrieg. We again demonstrate that despite of the fact that we were not prepared for this aggression, Ukrainian people are definitely not accept Putin. And we make a decision that civilian members of the battalion of the territorial defense receive the weapons. And today in the Kiev, the Putin will meet hell. And the Russian people and the Russian soldiers who come here to kill Ukrainians will pay the big price. But
so I think they underestimated it. Like, fam, you guys are going in on a military operation. These people are fighting for their country. Like, this isn't like you're going into someone else's territory. And so it's like, yeah, army versus army. Ukrainian army is weaker than Russia's army. But when you're talking army versus civilians, I think it could tip tip the scales.
Well, and but it goes right to stay on the theme of leadership as well, though, right? When you look at it, especially if it's true, that means you got people in Russian military that, from a leadership perspective, they weren't expecting to go into conflict, right? So, like, when you think of the mindset that you're trying to get your team ready for, right? If it was, hey, I'm leaving home and I'm gonna go do some exercises and then I'll be back. That's a different mindset than grabbing a weapon and leaving the house ready to die for what you believe in, right? So you throw those people into conflict in the middle of, I mean, even in the military, and I mean, anybody watching this in the military knows, like, a lot of people get hurt in training. But that's because when you're in the military, you get trained to train like you're really doing it. Right. But when you're doing exercises, when you're doing like reserve stuff, it's kind of light work. Right. Like you're not training for a battle. So like if that was really true and you're pivoted, I mean, he said 3,000 Russian casualties. Right. And, and 1,000 vehicles damaged or 110 tanks. Like that's insane for like the military, the size of the Ukraine, especially in a specific geographic area. So again, that leadership, when you're leading out of fear, when you're leading with disinformation, when you're leading with dishonesty, right? When we think about the Gideons and the like attacking the Philistines, like when you have some kind of noble principle that's behind you, that's leading your engagement, that's leading your energy, right? What you're capable of doing in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what was initially the motivation was like NATO expansion, which I could understand how agitating that could come across. But you also got to remember that Ukrainians gave up their nuclear weapons back in, I think, 94 after the fall of the Soviet Union. So there was an agreement here of like, hey, we're not going to go after you, relinquish your nuclear weapons. And NATO kind of started becoming a part of the question. NATO was off the table. And then Putin still invaded. So that should tell you that the frame of mind that he's having is not we feel threatened, so we need to protect. That may be how he's spinning it back in Russia, which we're going to talk about spinning Russia in a second. But let's watch some more of this clip.
Should understand that this war is not about Ukraine. This war is about you, our dear partners, about the West, about free world, because nobody knows where tomorrow will appear Putin. And that's why your assistance, your effective contribution to the Putin's aggression is vital for us, Ukraine. We're standing 2 kilometers from the Russian troops.
So as a former president, you personally have a weapon, you have a gun, and you are prepared to fight on the streets of Kyiv, the Russians, when that happens. Is that going to be in the next few hours, if they're only 2 kilometers away?
We already have Russian troops on this distance for more than 24 hours. And our battalion is meeting the enemy on the most difficult regions. Our soldiers participating in the freeing from Russian paratroopers Gostomel airport. We meet Russian soldiers on the entrance from the Obolon district. We now participating in the securing the governmental quarter or securing the mayor building in Kiev. And that's why this is a very responsible mission. And I'm together with my people, with the enthusiasm, with the volunteers from the Kiev who come here to protect the independence. And we're waiting the important steps from our allies, from our partners. We're waiting the strengthening the sanction. And I'm very much happy that just a few minutes ago, we received the information that there is no any nation in the European Union who can block introduction of the sanction to switch Russia off the SWIFT payment system.
So this is where they're transitioning into the sanctions on them. Somebody said he showed his firearm at the end of this. What was that part? I'm not sure I see that part. But anyway, dude is definitely out here with the thing on him. I think that's interesting. Here's something that I want to show you guys, and Pastor Roy, I'm gonna show this graphic, and then I want you to unpack this, because I think this is how we're seeing the leader versus the boss, right? This graphic here of this seems like what Putin's doing. He's in the cut, he's chilling, you know what I mean? He's back at home, where the leaders of the Ukrainian government are here on the front lines. The mayor, who was a ex-boxer, you know what I'm saying, and the ex-president, the president, they're here exemplifying the work being done and leading this. And I think that's where the morale changes. I think that's where things start to get unpredictable. I think that's where we go, wait a minute, this ain't gonna be a pushover. These people are willing to lay down their life for the opportunity to be more aligned to a Western ideology. And I think that's where I think we're kind of missing some of this, and we're gonna unpack some of this a bit more. But this is very much so like Ukraine wants to be a part of the West. They want to be a part of Europe. They want to potentially even be a part of the EU someday. And so I think we're missing what the deeper motivation here. And ultimately, they want independence outside of Russia. So Pastor Roy, as a leader, as someone that, you know, you're in corporate America, you're a VP of a major company, unpack some of these ideas for us in terms of this style of leadership and how you know, when you talk about, you know, the boss versus the leader, they're totally different mentalities, and we're seeing them on full display.
Yeah, and it's, you know, and people talk about this, right? And, you know, it's the whole concept. Can you develop leaders? Do you develop managers, right? Are they born? Are they created? Can you work this into somebody's mentality? But I think some people are just leaders, right? And when they're in positions where they get to manage or they get to lead individuals, they just have a much more positive impact. I just finished reading a book on positive leadership, right? That, like, leaders who are servant leaders, who do what we're talking about, who will, who are willing to do whatever they ask their employees to do, who are willing to get dirty, who are willing to get down into the weeds when necessary, that they have this, like, positive energizing capability. Right. So when they come amongst the people that they lead, it's not like this fear and apprehension and kind of bureaucracy, right? That hierarchy of, you know, like, don't look the boss in the eyes. And right. It's like, OK, when that leader comes in, he energizes those people, and that helps a movement move forward. Right. Because when you have somebody, you know, when you have, like, examples, when you see Putin, right, who's at the Geneva, you know, in Geneva, speaking at the conference while his people are on the front lines. Right. So it's like you're trying to represent an idea, but you're not getting out there and standing in the midst of some of the turmoil that you created as well as the leader of Russia. So from a leadership perspective, man, it's so important that, one, if you're going to ask somebody to do something, that you've got to be willing to sacrifice the same thing you're asking somebody else to sacrifice.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, like, listen to me. Listen to me. My father still has a business in Moscow, okay? Hear me loud and clear on this. There is a different mentality with the Russian government, with Putin being in power longer than any world leader for 3 decades. Stop with the shenanigans. Don't push the conspiratory nonsense here. These are my people. There's a clear distinction in terms of how these folks operate. I know my folks. Like, I know these people. I know the sacrifice that my families have to make to pull away, the tension that my dad had to live in to go back and forth. It is an absolutely different experience and a different ideology that's being ran in Russia by Putin. Hence, he's been a dictator for 30 years. Okay, so you guys could be like, oh, so-and-so's up, but you don't know what you're talking about. And unless you've been to Moscow, like I've been to Moscow, unless you've been over there, unless you understand the culture and you understand the ideology and what these people think about, it's a different world. It's a different world. So cut it out, because a lot of you guys are speaking about stuff you've never experienced. You've never been to Soviet. You've never experienced Soviet Russia and Soviet Union communism, and you haven't seen the other side of it and what became of Russia post the fall of communism. Okay, so you really don't know what you're talking about. Don't do that. Don't do that in my chat. You'll be put on timeout. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm not an expert on a lot of things. A lot of things I don't know a whole lot about. Okay, a lot of things I don't know about. I come from this. All right, this is kind of my wheelhouse. Yeah. Okay, like I know what I'm talking about. So miss me with the puppet state. Miss me with that stuff. The president of Russia is operating under an entirely different ideology than people in the West can even comprehend. You don't understand what trying to bring Russia back to its Soviet glory means. You don't get it. You don't understand what Russia was when we were closed off from the world and we thought we were the best ever. And then people started leaving the Soviet Union and experiencing the West and like, oh, this is way different, right? You don't know what you're talking about. You really don't know what you're talking about. This is a different mentality, and he's trying to bring Russia back to its glory of the Russian Empire by any means necessary. And he's driven something by much different than comfort, much different than consumerism, much different than your pleasures. You don't know what you're talking about, so don't talk about it here. Okay? Again, I'm not gonna come on here and flex like I know everything about everything. This is an area that I'm fairly aware of, as I grew up in Soviet Russia. I grew up, and my dad still goes back and forth to post-Soviet Russia, and this is a different beast. This isn't your little Western conspiracy theory doesn't fit here. Okay, so cut it out. You got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, and you know how I am, Ruslan. I normally be moderating in these and just shutting people up, because that's the thing, right? Sometimes we just have to stop and learn before we choose to speak, right? It's so we got access to too many keyboards and too many things to type on, right? Where we can just always share an opinion that doesn't have to be informed. And we really, especially when it's something as critical as this, right? Like people are dying, like this isn't we're not talking about Elijah Furtick, right? And or Transformation Church or Elevation Church. Like this is real life consequences. There are people's sons and fathers grabbing weapons right now trying to defend their homeland. So like we've got to have some level of sensitivity and respect for the severity of situations as well. If we want to speak into them, right? Like go learn, understand, speak to somebody who's been in there. Like I was listening to some news, right? I was listening to people who were in Brighton Beach in New York, right? So like they had some old Russians that came from like Soviet Russia, and like they get all of their news from Russia. And then there were like their grandkids, like another generation, and they were like, and like you just said, they were like, you can't even talk to my parents about Russia, my grandparents about Russia. Right. Like they were like, they don't listen to anything but state-sponsored news. Like everything is good, but they were like, at the end of the day, my parents still want, my grandparents still want Soviet Russia. Right. Right. Like they still think that's the greatest thing, and they only came to America because it got disbanded. Right. So sometimes we just need just show up to listen and learn. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'm telling you guys, like I know my people. Like I know my people. And we're not gonna do that here. We're not gonna do that here. Okay. Here's something that happened that should be telling of this, which is there's a specific way this is being spun in Russia by the state-sanctioned media. Remember, Russia owns and controls the media, the way China does, the way North Korea does. Anonymous, the organization that hacked Russia's TV and started putting the actual things that were happening on the ground on all of Russia's TV, and hacked some of their other government agency stuff, right? So this is Anonymous showing all the actual events happening in Ukraine to the Russian people. And the Russian people, by the way, generally most Russian folks are against this situation. They just can't protest like you and I can protest. If they go out,
they're getting arrested. They've already arrested hundreds, if not thousands of people.
I think the last one I saw yesterday was 1,800 people that they've arrested for anti-war protest in Russia.
Yeah. So Anonymous hacks Russia's TV and starts showing them the actual reality of what's happening in Ukraine. And this is wild. So, like, again, you could come here with the Dunning-Kruger, you got all the answers, you don't got all the answers, Sway. You don't know what you're talking about, all right? So Anonymous is hacking Russia's TV and showing them what's happening. Now, I'm not saying Anonymous is good or bad. I'm just saying that should give you some context where this agency that's like a watchdog of the internet is stepping in and saying, we're gonna spin this situation. Someone just said 6,000 arrests in Russia for protesting.
Yeah.
This is not Russian people versus Ukrainian people. This is Putin wanting to take back the glory of pre-Soviet Union Russia, the Russian Empire. This is, I'm telling you guys, this is different. Now, it's cute for us to sit around and argue about this stuff, but I think what we miss is that there's other people in the world that are motivated by things that are different than just consumerism, comfort. And while we're sitting here arguing about conspiracy theories, and we're sitting here arguing about, is gender a social construct, is race a social construct, what is non-binary, we're arguing about this. There's real things happening across the world where people are motivated by different things than what we're motivated in the West. And that should give you some degree of awareness that the world is not all peaches and cream. It's not all butterflies and roses, and your experience being the experience that everybody has to coddle you in your situation. There's real things that happen, right? And just because you think something and you felt something inside and you think you have a theory on something, there's an entire world that it gets real. And people who've ever traveled outside of the United States, or if you were born outside of the United States like I was, I promise you, the rest of the world doesn't give a crap about your feelings. There's some real stuff going on. If you want to talk to this guy, I'm going to queue up another video, Pastor Roy, but if you want to add to this idea, because I think people kind of get it twisted and think that this is what it is. Like, it's all just peaches and cream. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are coddled a bit in America, right? Because even in our leadership, right? Our leadership is divisive. You know what I mean? So like we're in a house divided against itself as it is, because we spend most of our time sniping at each other unless there's some serious, like American crisis, right? Like in which we haven't really had one since 9/11. Right? And like that was the last time America really unified behind an idea or a premise in my lifetime anyway. So like we lack that, right? We lack even though people are very America, like America lacks a national identity. Right, that stops us from mobilizing in ways like that, right? Like Ukraine is trying to hold on to a national identity that's fighting against, right? Like you said, that Russia wanting that glory. And Russia, right, is fighting for a Soviet Russian identity, right? Like, and so our national identity is so fractured and fragmented that it's hard for us to understand this, because we're all in our individual kingdoms of identity and thought and preference and politic and religion and denomination, right? That like it's hard for us to to think about it, right? People always joke like we'd have to get attacked by aliens for Americans to come together, right? Like we would need an enemy that big to address it, because other than that we fight over the issues on the margin, where it's hard for us to even mobilize around things that are significant, right? COVID, right? Yeah. Look at COVID. I mean, I have colleagues in Europe in that early, and I don't know if I told you this, early in the pandemic, I have a colleague in Italy and another one in Austria, and they were like, you guys will have COVID in America forever. And I was like, why do you say that? And he was like, because you can't tell Americans what to do. He was like, we fought COVID in Italy by shutting the entire country down. He said, if you guys tried to do that, people would try to kill somebody. And look what happened, right? Like, it's crazy.
That's good. So yeah, definitely first world problems. All right, I want to bounce this video off of you, Pastor Roy, and some of you guys are gonna get triggered. Some of you guys are gonna get triggered, but this is kind of where I wanted to take this conversation. Pastor Roy don't know I'm about to show this video, but I think this, to me, I think this is how, in my opinion, I think that we're dealing with a lot of first world problems. We're dividing over a lot of nonsensical issues, and it could get real. Like, it could get real in America. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could get real. So I want to show you guys this video, and I want to get Pastor Roy's reaction to it, and then we'll wrap up. All right. So this is Coleon Nior. I'm sure you're familiar with him, Pastor Roy, and you guys tell me what you think about this.
Introduce you to the exact reason why we have the Second Amendment.
Moments ago, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on all of its citizens who were ready to defend the country from Russian forces to come forward, saying Kyiv would issue weapons to everyone who wants them. Russia launched an all-out invasion of Ukraine by land, air, and sea, the biggest attack by one state against another in Europe since World War II.
So how bloody do you think this can get? How much fight do you think the Ukrainians have here?
I think Ukrainians have 150%, 500% fight. I mean, they're going to fight like hell. And actually, they just passed a law in which guns are allowed to be used in freely in Ukraine. So that is a preparation. So if every Ukrainian takes a gun, Russians don't have a prayer. I mean, the military can fight, but it would be Ukrainians, I think, really ready to die.
So I don't know if I'm tripping, but is CNN now pro two-way? No, they're not. They're still very much anti-two-way, but they know they will look silly trying to go up against what this woman is saying, considering everything that's going on right now. I have a very good friend of mine who, whenever he's having conversations with people about the Second Amendment, he likes to ask these series of questions to get them to understand the reality of what the Second Amendment is about. First question he asks is, so do you ever think that you'll see World War III in your lifetime? And considering everything that's going on right now, most people say yes. Then the next question he asks is, so if you happen to be in World War III, would you prefer to have a gun or not have a gun? Most people say, yeah. So here's the thing. I'm not saying that we're absolutely going to see World War III. But one thing we have to understand is there's a reason why we have the Second Amendment. And there's a lot of people that don't like to accept the reality. See, when I talk about the Second Amendment and how the Second Amendment was put in place to protect our country against foreign or domestic tyrannical governments, people look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, where are you getting this from? This could never happen here. No. Come on, we're a modern progressive society. Well, allow me to introduce you to 2022, considering everything that's going on right now. The irony is, Ukraine's gun laws, comparatively speaking to its surrounding countries, gun laws aren't as restrictive as the other countries. But there's something to be said about the fact that they were strict enough that they have to loosen them so that people can now go out and buy firearms to protect themselves against a foreign threat. There are nothing but sharks out there. The only thing that they respect, the only language they speak is power. It's no different than you having to deal with criminals here in America, where the only thing they understand and the only language they speak is power. The Second Amendment was written for that very thing. Was designed for us to have what we needed, because the founding fathers who put that in place, the reason they wrote the Second Amendment, they just got done fighting a war against a foreign government that they thought was tyrannical. And so they said, well, if we're going to have this thing here that we value and we cherish, which is based and predicated on the idea of freedom and self-reliance, we need to protect the very thing that they would need to fight back against a government, whether it was domestic or foreign, from trying to take that away from them. And that would be the Second Amendment. For all these years, you have this government that you relied on to keep you safe. And they said they would keep you safe. And they would do this by having gun laws and all these restrictions on people's ability to have firearms, only for them to later on tell you, hey, guess what? We're relaxing those laws now. Go out and buy all the guns that you want, because you're going to need them to protect yourself, because honestly, we can't do anything for you. As a matter of fact, we actually need your help to fight the people who are trying to invade us now. That should be a prime example for everyone here in America. See, right now, we don't have to get the government's permission to do these things, because we have a Second Amendment right here in this country. So take advantage of the fact that here in America, we have an unrestricted right to exercise our Second Amendment, because most people don't have that luxury, but we do. So go out there, buy a gun, learn to use it safely, learn to use it effectively. There's so much information out there for people to ascertain and get in order to learn to use a firearm effectively and safely. That's what we need to be doing in this country, because whether you like it or not, reality is reality. There's nothing you can do about it. You can talk about how moral and virtuous you are and how a gun signifies violence and you're anti-violence. Cool. Be that way all you want. But when it comes down to it, understand the reality, at some point it's going to make you have to flip that switch to defend that thing that you say you are. Because the thing that would be coming for you doesn't care about your morality. It doesn't care about your compassion. It doesn't care about your grace. The only thing it respects is equal or greater power. That is it. And that, for a lot of people, for the vast majority of people, is what the Second Amendment represents. There are some people out there who see you as a target. There are people out there who see you as a victim. You're going to have to defend that, because with freedom comes responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is defending it. It doesn't just go on autonomously. Freedom has to actively be defended. It sucks. I'm the most compassionate person in the world. I really am. I hate that aspect about me to a degree sometimes, but I also understand reality. And with reality means that I'm going to have to flip that switch at one point. I may not like it, but in order for me to maintain the thing that I consider beautiful, the thing that I consider to be extremely important, whether that be my ability to live and be compassionate and to have grace and so forth and so on, I have to still be able to protect that. That's just the way things are. It is what it is. So you can't wish upon a star and hope that things just get better. Freedom has to actively be protected.
Right. So from an American perspective, absolutely. But for people who are supposed to be Christian, That's not the way we're called to respond to power. We get that out the way. So let's just jump past the Christian part of the conversation. I don't know what his faith is, but right, that first of all, from a European perspective, right, he's trying to create this juxtaposition, right? So from a European perspective, if you look at Sweden, everybody in Sweden has a military rifle, right? That's over 18, right? You have voluntary required service in most developed European nations,
right,
where the men are required to serve in the military. So this is unusual for them not to already have weapons, number one, right? So this is normal in Europe, right, that adult men have weapons and are, or because if they don't serve in the military, they got to serve in some other fashion, right? Yeah. Fire department or whatever else. So that's not the same as the Second Amendment argument, and we got to have a weapon because we got to resist tyranny within America. I'm not against Second Amendment rights, but the reason European countries don't have a significant amount of violence with weapons is because of the distribution of weapons in the population, right? So, and even in his video, he's sitting behind a massive wall. No one is going to pick up 13 AR-15s and a couple of M4s from, right? They're going to get a weapon to fight, right? So, like this like dogmatic thing.
I think options are nice though.
Yeah, options are nice.
I think options are nice.
I've got multiple guns. Yeah, I've got like 7 guns.
And to be fair, yeah, America is separated by a massive body of water from any of our perceived enemies. That is a thing, right? So even like if you look up like a infographics video on like could somebody come to America, like we're in a different situation here.
And if you look at the size of our military and the proportion of our military spending compared to every, we beat the other 10 countries.
Yeah, but I do think he drives a great point in that, hey, we're so progressive here with our gun laws, and when it gets real, you then go and equip these other countries with the very thing that you think harms society to protect them from a more harmful society. It's that old, hey, the only thing that can neutralize a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. You know what I mean? And so for the same reason you carry, for the same reason I'll probably eventually get my conceal and carry in California, though it's way harder out here. I think it's probably wise for people to learn a little bit, at the very least, on how to defend yourself, at the very least to have a taser on you or something, so that if it goes down on a regular basis, that you can protect yourself. Because I do think that we can be as virtuous as we want. We could try to come up with this like utopian, everything is peachy, but the world's a dark place, man. The world is wild. I think we underestimate, because of how comfortable we are, how dark and how real it can get. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so I think he's just pointing out the irony and the hypocrisy of this situation.
Yeah, and he's using the sound, right, like CNN saying that, it's a good thing. I think my problem is this with the whole gun conversation and debate. You can be proud as someone who is really engaged in gun culture, and not try to project it on everyone else in America as if they're not American or they're not masculine because they're not massing weapons and bullets.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Like,
I mean, you have a couple firearms, I got a couple firearms. Yeah. According to New York, I mean, this dude is the face of 2A
and
on
that's
YouTube.
What I'm talking about. So
you know what I mean? He had almost 2 million subscribers.
Yeah.
Like he's a bit hyperbolic with just this presentation for sure. Yeah. But I mean, there's a lot of folks here that claim to be pacifists. There's a lot of folks claim, that think you have to be Christian and pacifist. And bro, I've even went to the extent of somebody saying like, if somebody breaks into your house and tries to take your life, if you're a Christian, you should just let them. Like that's some really toxic, wonky theology to be that far gone, to not want to protect your family.
Yeah, and I agree, right? And that's why I think there's a line, right? Like when we present like exaggerated, perspectives, then somebody's like, oh, that's insane. Like, I think people should know, and even this, right? If something happened right now and we go into World War III and there's a draft, it's not like they're going to be not going to try to grab able-bodied men and get you to resist the tyranny, right? There was no organized military when we were trying to fight against Europe. Everybody's, if you haven't seen the Hamilton play, go watch it, right? They were just grabbing random people and trying to make it. So you've got reservists, right? You've got all of this stuff. Like, you know, and that's my thing. Like, there are ways in which we can also get equipped and get trained and be available, right? People can get drafted. People can join the military. And you know, and again, right, if the military turns tyrannical and has the wrong leader, you know, all of that other stuff. So I'm not against it. My problem is the dogma behind it.
Sure.
Right? That like it's a savior. Like he was talking about the gun like it's a savior. And as a pastor, that's a conflict for me.
I don't think Corleone is a Christian. To be fair, I don't think he's.
I know Christians who do the same thing, right? I got a lot of employees in Texas, right? So, and that's my thing. When it gets conflated as right, like it's a tool, but it is not the mechanism, right? Like, and I tell people all the time, like you got guns, they got drones. So like, if you're talking about escalation, I don't know exactly what you think you're gonna stop if somebody wants to, somebody with drones wants to take your neighborhood, they will just kill all of you with a bomb, right? Like,
yeah.
Like I'm from the nuclear part of the Navy. I know what they can do that has nothing to do with you pum, you know, little gunshots. But it's like you said, it's some bad stuff, right? You see these missiles and stuff that are getting launched. People in them houses got guns, but the gun don't matter when a missile hits the side of your apartment building, right? Like, you got to run out for that. So, and that's the thing. That's the differentiation for me, right? Like, it's a tool. It's not a savior, and we don't need to make it dogma. If you like guns, if you want to collect guns, if you want to use a gun, that's fine. I think people need to be equipped, right? I think men, women, especially if you're single women, you need to have means to protecting your family, your children, right? That is our responsibility, and the means that you use to do that is up to you.
So you're saying people should know how to handle firearms?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Because that's not what that was coming across.
Yeah. No, that's, you know what I mean? Like
that was a dogmatic statement, though.
No, but I'm saying you should know how to use I think everybody should know how to use a firearm. Like my daughters have handled rifles. You know what I mean? So like, because one, I have firearms in my home, but even if you're like to know that if you put a little bit of pressure on the butt of a gun, somebody can't fire it.
Yeah.
That's good to know if you're going to get robbed at gunpoint, right? Yep. I've been robbed at gunpoint twice and had guns pointed to my head.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like, so it's, you know, where I come from, at least, I don't come from a candy coated world. So knowing what they are, how they work, right, I think is something that people should know. Basic firearm safety training.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm saying I'm in California, bro.
Oh, I know.
And that's not the tone. Like that's like, no, guns are bad. You can't do it. You shouldn't do it. You should never do it. You know. And I'm like, nah. Like I think you do need to know at least as a man, you should know how to protect yourself. You should know how to protect your family. You should know some of these different things. And I would go to the extent to say, as a man, you should know how to provide. You know what I mean? You should know how to be the priest and the pastor of your home. Like I would add all those things on there. So you know, it's cool to say in theory until it hits the fan and something potentially can go down. Financially, from a pastoral standpoint, right? Like you could be we're a nice egalitarian couple and my wife, you're like, that's all cute until like a moral failure happens in your household. It's going to be on the husband. You know what I mean? Like these things usually, even though it may not be our fault, it's our responsibility to protect, provide, and to pastor, in my opinion.
That's a leadership statement right there.
Yes, that's a leadership. That's a leadership. It may not be my fault, but it is my responsibility. Shout out to who is it that came in? I don't know if you know who CMAC is, but somebody came in and said they said the president of Ukraine is keeping it 55th Street.
He out there strapped. He's like, look here, this.
He keeping it 55th Street. Yo, shout out to everybody watching. Pastor Roy, in terms of this and just this, the idea of leadership, the idea of leading by example, servant leadership, which is what I loved about Jesus, is when they came to him and they wanted to talk about who was going to be the greatest and what they thought was going to be a military political kingdom that Jesus was going to set up. Jesus didn't redirect their desire to be great. He didn't rebuke their desire to be great or to want to be in a position of influence. He redirected it and said, okay, you got to be the biggest servant of all. Right? Yeah. If you want to be first, you want to be last. Can you unpack that a bit as someone that is in the corporate world and you're dealing with people on a regular basis, but even at your secular non-Christian job, they still call you Pastor Roy Dockery. Can you just unpack that a little bit, how all that works?
Yeah, and I think the main thing when you talk about leadership is that like people are looking for the same qualities in somebody that they have to follow, right? And so like Ken Blanchard, who wrote like the 30-Minute Manager, he wound up getting saved later in life, and he wrote the book Lead Like Jesus, and he was like, everything that I had learned at Harvard and all of these conferences, and he said even the stuff that he had wrote in his book, the 30-Minute Manager, he was like, after he got saved, he realized he was just describing Jesus. Right, so like even if you look at Gary Vee, you look at the Tony Robbins, like you look at all of these people who post this leadership stuff, and the only the only social media I have is LinkedIn. Like 9 out of 10 quotes on LinkedIn is like some distorted biblical verse, right? Like it's just people repackaging what's already there. So like the framework of Christianity is popular in corporate America. People just don't call it Christian.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, the golden rule. How many times in a business setting have you heard people talk about the golden rule? How many times in an entrepreneurship setting do you hear people talk about the golden rule? Everybody knows it comes from the Bible,
right.
But nobody wants to give credit to that. So I never understand how Christians, if we're moving and functioning in the way that God told us to, how we're not succeeding in business and how we're not succeeding as leaders.
Come on.
Because if we're leading like Jesus, right? And Jesus wasn't going around quoting the Bible, hitting people in the head unless he was dealing with a Pharisee either. You know what I mean? Like if we're leading like Jesus and we're sacrificial and we're servants and we love people and we're considering others more significant than ourselves, right? And we're willing to get in, we're willing to take the time to explain things. Right? How many times was Jesus was on the boat? Like, if I got to tell y'all one more time, but he was like, my father sent me to do something, so let me go explain it to them again, right? That patience, that grace. That's the stuff that's made me successful because even, I've been at the same company for 10 years. I started as a technician and now I'm the vice president. But when I was a technician, I was serving my coworkers. When I saw somebody who didn't know how to do something and we didn't have training material, I was like, you know what? I went to school. I got a background in business education. Let me make some training material. And I was just trying to help my mans out, right? I wasn't doing that to be promoted, right? When I saw people struggling, I helped them. Right? Like when I saw people struggling with their families, when I saw people struggling with their marriages, right? I turned down a job and gave it to a friend of mine at work because his wife didn't like where they were living and it was going to lead to his marriage ending.
Come on.
Right? So I was like, you know what? You take that position in PA because I was going to take it because I was tired of traveling. I put more travel responsibility on my marriage because my marriage could handle it. And I asked him to take that position. And like within 4 months, I had got promoted to be the manager. Right? So that's the thing, like when we live out the biblical principles, right? Like it's the stuff that everybody wants to see. Like servant leadership is a buzzword in the community, leading from behind, right? You could, if you go out there, I guarantee you, if you randomly select 10 books on leadership, I guarantee you within the first 5 pages as a Christian, you'll find something that Jesus said that's just been tweaked or reworded because like Jesus personified leadership that's effective in every sphere of life, not just at church, right? Even being a pastor, right, at a local church, it frustrates me sometimes how people don't lead like Jesus in church, right? Like, why do I have to send you an invitation? Why is it all about a meeting? Like, why aren't people showing up ready to serve? Why I got to fill out 4 forms for you to be here and for you to do what you said you were going to do? Like, why are you not leading and why are you not serving in the way that Christ called us to? So I think it's right. I think the characters that we all look for, right? If you think about a good boss that you had, right? If you think about a good leader that you had, a good coach that you had, it's because they possess some of those same qualities that Jesus exemplified, right? So if we're acting really as Christians, but we compartmentalize our lives, right? Like we go to work and we somebody completely different. And I tell all my mentees, I said, the reason it's twice as hard for you to get your job done is because only half of you showed up to work anyway. You know what I mean? So if your Christian half stayed home, then maybe that's why you're struggling with building relationships at work. And maybe that's why you struggle with customer service and being empathetic, right? Because you're trying to not be Christian at work. Like there's nothing illegal about being a Christian at work. There's nothing illegal about, right? I flew here today with I'm a Christian mask on. You know what I'm saying? And everybody's like, I love your mask and your hoodie because I got on the Make Racism Illegal hoodie. I'm sending conflicting messages to people messing up their day. Like I'm a Christian who wants racism to be illegal. But that's the thing that I've found. And like I have employees who are atheists. I have employees who are agnostic. I've had employees who are Muslim. And one of my employees told me, he was like, you know what? I don't really rock with, you know, I do Christian hip hop. He was like, I don't really rock with Christianity like that, but you're my son's favorite rapper. And I was like, what? I was like, your son listens to my music. He was like, yeah, but I'm like, but you don't believe what I believe. And he said, if my son grew up to want it to be like you, I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you became successful in corporate America by serving people here.
Yeah.
That's
and being
it.
Christian.
That's it. By just loving people and serving people and being Christian. Isn't that interesting? So, and I say all that to say, because it's such a simple truth, but some of you guys want to make up stuff, say nonsense, right? And here's the frustrating part. Like somebody said, this is such a poverty gospel mentality. True Christians will be persecuted, not rich and highly successful. The world doesn't want to hear Jesus is the only way. Okay. Clearly, Pastor Roy Dockery, being a vice president where he started from the bottom and now we're here, shout out to Drizzy Drake, right? Should show you that what you're saying is absolutely nonsense. Will there be trouble and persecution? Yes, we will experience trouble. Jesus promises this much. But that limiting belief, that nonsensical limiting belief is something that you're going to have to wrestle with and deal with. And guess what? You behave based on what you believe. What you believe will determine how you behave. So if you believe that I can never be successful, the game is rigged, Christians can't be successful, I can't have any money, I'll never be able to have more so I can give and be generous with people and take care of people, let people. If you believe that, then you're going to behave accordingly. You're going to suck as an employee. You're going to be trash at work. No one's going to want to be around you because you already have this goofy chip on your shoulder to make you think that everybody's out to get you, when it's not that they're out to get you. It's that they're hostile to the gospel, but it's because you're being a goofy by believing that nonsense and then thinking that, oh, well, I guess Pastor Roy Dockery just said he went through the airport with a I'm a Christian mask and a make racism illegal hoodie. Two very polarizing messages. I don't even want to ask what make racism illegal means because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but these are two very polarizing messages and people are rocking with him. So you believing that is going to determine how you behave. And here's the deal, and I say all that to say this. You don't get to bring that energy here. This is a conversation between me, between Pastor Roy, and between the chat and the community here. You may think that you have a platform to say whatever you want on my stream. You don't. I hate to break it to you. You don't. We get to curate this discussion. I get to curate what we're going to talk about. We're not going to talk about nonsensical conspiracy theories. There's other channels that can do that. There's other channels that can be like, Ukraine is a puppet country and Putin is really the good guy. We're not doing that here. You go do that somewhere else, okay? You will get blocked, you will get banned. No, I don't have to tolerate it. No, I don't.
There you go.
You can say whatever you want to. You can say whatever you want to, but that's going to come with certain consequences, and I don't have to allow that nonsense. I don't have to allow that goofy thought into my stratosphere and into the rest of my community here where there's a lot of young men struggling with leadership, struggling with identity, struggling with becoming providers, and you come in and say some goofy nonsensical stuff like Christians can't be successful and earn money and provide for their families because I don't. No, we're not playing that game here. You take that energy somewhere else, and I get to curate this, and I said your First Amendment rights don't apply here. Okay? You could say what you want, but I don't have to listen, and you don't get to have a voice here just because you think you're entitled to a voice. Go somewhere else with that. Start your own YouTube channel. Make an angry video about me. Make an angry video about Pastor Roy Dockery. Talk about how we're fake Christians because we like to earn money and provide for our families. You can do all of that, but you're not going to do that here. Is there anything you want to add to that, Pastor Roy Dockery?
Yeah, and just real quick, right? The persecution topic, right? Because you blocking and moderating people, you persecuting now, Ruslan. That's going to be the next video.
Of course.
But what is the Bible talking about we're being persecuted for? Right? The Bible is talking about us being persecuted because we refuse to deny Christ.
Come on.
Right? And then you will suffer persecution. Like, that's what is right. Jesus said they will persecute you because you love me.
Right.
Right? Like, I don't understand where we got this goofy mentality mixed up, right? Now, I'm going to use your word goofy, that like, that means that there isn't anywhere we can maneuver, right? Where we can be successful and impactful and powerful and in position, right? And I'm, you know, and like you said, some of it is like a poverty mindset, but some of it is the gross generalization of persecution.
Come on.
Right?
It's a persecution complex. It's wanting to be a victim. You want to be a Christian victim.
Martyr. Like, you want to be a martyr. Like, I want to be martyred for my faith. Like, if that's cool, if that's what you're called to.
Go to China.
You know what I mean?
We got you. Go to China. Go to North Korea. They
Like,
got you, fam.
It's a lot of places. And so I think we've got to be mindful of that because, like, and this is what I talk about. Like, you know, and like I said, you know, I mentor people in business and executives and whatever, right? Like, but my main thing is, like, what are you being like, you know, because people are like, oh, you know, I don't want to step into a role. Like, no one at my job has ever asked me to denounce Christ.
Come on.
No one, right? Like, I've been asked before, like, Roy, how do you do stuff in the community? How are you serving in the church and still killing at work? You know what my answer has been for 11 years, Ruslan?
What's that?
God and my wife.
Come on.
That is my answer in my performance appraisals.
Come on.
Right? God and my wife is phenomenal, so I ain't got to worry about my family. Right? Like, she makes sure everybody's good. She makes sure I'm good. And God, like, that's who gives me the energy. That's giving me. There's nothing anybody can do about that when I say it at work. Now, if I said that at work and somebody was like, Roy, I'm gonna really need you to shut down the God stuff. Roy, like, I'm an executive at my company. Company's tagged. You know, like I said, my only social media I have is LinkedIn. I put sermons on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Nobody in my marketing department has come to me saying, Roy, you're one of our executives. We promote you as a thought leader. Mm-hmm. We can't have you putting sermons on your LinkedIn page. Nobody has done that. If somebody did, I'd be calling you, be like, hey, bro, what I need to order? Because I guess I'm going full time on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Because I would not, you know what I mean? Like, I would not denounce my faith or minimize what God's called me to do. But you got people who are assuming, right? Or you've never even been in a position to really have any power or authority, right? And then so you keep recoiling back from it. When I feel like if God can use me, I got people at this conference I'm going to in San Diego that want to talk to me about faith, bruh, not service, because they saw me on LinkedIn and was like, man, I really want to talk to you about that video that you posted or this quote that you put. So I have people coming up to me at professional events that want to ask me about the profession of my faith, that give me an opportunity to share the gospel, that give me an opportunity to empower other people to live their faith out loud, right? And I'm not, you know what I mean? And like, and there are, like, I've had people who've hated on me. I've had people who tried to get me fired. I have people who tried to report me, but nothing ended. Yep. Nothing came of it because, again, like you said earlier, trying to be an elder, right? I try to live a life that's above reproach. Yep. You can have a problem with me, but if you ain't got no evidence, you know what I'm saying, then take it out the door with you.
And because you are very efficient and solid at what you do, you probably have some of that leeway that may even be against company policy to do certain things, right? So I think sometimes people think like, I'm going to do a crappy job and then I'm going to talk about Jesus for 2 hours of the 8-hour workday at my job. And then when I get reprimanded, I'm going to say I'm being persecuted.
But that's
not persecution.
And that's unchristian.
You're stealing from your job. You're being a thief.
Yeah, you're being a time thief, and then you're persecuted because, right, you can talk about whatever you want on your lunch break, on your break, but if you proselytizing the people on the phone when you're supposed to be selling insurance or, you know, helping them troubleshoot their Wi-Fi problem, you're not doing your job, right? Yep. So you got to figure out ways to do that. But, you know, you sign employment contracts, right? That's another thing. People assign employment contracts or company policies and not realize you signed a company policy that said you can't say political statements online, right? To give you an example, Ruslan, I work at a secular company based out of Europe. And I can say things on social media that friends of mine who work for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes can't say about black people, can't say about racism, can't say about politics. So I have more freedom as a Christian because I don't have to sign these respectability and kind of political, I don't want to upset my fundraiser clauses in a lot of these nonprofits. So like I actually have more freedom to move in where God called me to move because I don't work at a Christian organization, because I know a lot of people that are limited because of it. Yep. And because, again, you sign that contract, and if you sign that contract, you as a Christian should be abiding by that.
Shout out to Real Talk with Jeremiah. He said, I think Joseph and how he moved through Egypt as second in command while holding to his true faith in God. God will keep you whenever you are and sustain you. Amen. Amen. And this, Joseph, there's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, there's Daniel, there's tons of examples of that all throughout the scriptures. Let's see. Let me see if there's any other comments before we get out of here. Amen. When you work for the... that could just be Roy's experience. There are some people who do a great job and catch hell because they still bleed red and not the company. There are. I mean, yes, there are. But I think what you're missing, and this is the thing, like, let's not go to the exception to the rule, right? We always play this game. Somebody be like, hey, man, if you serve people, if you do great at your job, if you really care about people, you're going to do well. Macro, generally speaking. Now, could there be toxic companies? Could there be toxic leaders? Yes. But generally speaking, here we're giving you the blueprint. We're giving you the blueprint. And then somebody's like, well, you could still have to switch to okay. It's like me, Pastor Roy is saying, it's like, yo, we're in our 30s now. You know, we're trying to stay lean, trying to eat right. You know, so it's like, hey, let's not go eat California burritos and let's go get some salad bowls and let's lift and do compound weights and let's consume more less than we extract. If you do those things, you'll generally get fit. You'll build muscle if you know the compound list. And somebody be like, yeah, but somebody in Nebraska has a thyroid issue and they're genetically predisposed to being fat. Okay, we're not talking about the exception to the rule. Stop pointing to the exception to the rule every single time somebody's giving you facts and truth. Pastor Roy Dockery been in this thing for I don't know how many years. This man's crushing it. He's making more money than most of you will make or are making right now, and he's giving you the blueprint. He's giving you the blueprint, and you're still going, well, just somebody somewhere. Yes, somebody somewhere. Yes, somebody somewhere is struggling with an area. Okay, but that doesn't change the fact that when you get proper information from mentors that teach you how to implement the said information from the scriptures, that the needle will move. Eat more salads and more protein and move more and you will lose weight. Thermodynamics, fam. There's an order that the God has set up how this universe works. There's an order to these things. So you keep telling me, hey, yeah, hey, you really should go out and you should sow some seed and then you should water the ground and then you should really care. You should pull the weeds out, right? And so it's like, well, if it doesn't work, yeah, it may not work. But that doesn't change the fact that we live in a cause and effect, reap and sow world. And the more you deny that, the more you're playing yourself. There's men on here and you're playing yourself. We're trying to give you access to like real leaders, not just YouTubers that, yeah, okay, maybe I got lucky in the algorithm. Okay, maybe I got lucky. Pastor Roy is a recreatable, predictable form of success. And we're trying to give you guys the blueprint and you're still pushing back and saying nonsensical, goofy things. Eat more salad, move more, learn the compound lives, stop eating like crap, go outside, get some sunlight, and odds are you're going to get in shape. Things will change. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. You may have a gut issue with your stomach. There may be a thyroid issue, but generally speaking, if you do A, B, and C, these things will happen. Sorry, I'm getting passionate. Pastor Roy, feel free to chime in.
No, so what I was gonna say is, right, I don't disagree with Will's statement, right? Everybody's experience is different, but understand, right, I'm not just talking about my experience. One, I mentor people all over the world, right? So I have people who are applying these. I have direct employees who applied this, right, and have had six-figure salaries now for several years, right? I've got mentees who are applying this and now have six-figure salaries. And I'm not saying that in like a prosperity kind of way because they worked hard, right? They grinded, but what they wound up doing is they wound up becoming leaders of people because they choose to serve, right? And there are toxic cultures. I don't know what it means to bleed red instead of bleeding the company, but I can tell you I've changed our company culture. My company this month, Ruslan, for the first time in 105 years of existence, has started posting Black History facts associated with our industry, right? My company posted a June 19th thing when it became a federal holiday. You know why? Because I'm the only Black vice president in the company's history, and I am very active, right? I take off Martin Luther King. I don't work on June 19th. They're not holidays. I observe them. I don't work. So I've influenced the culture at the company because as Christians, right, what should we be doing? It's not just we go somewhere and if it's not the way that we want it to be, this is why don't nobody go to church, right? Because we go somewhere, and if it's not exactly what we want it to be, if it's not cookie cutter and I'm not fitting into it perfectly, then I run away.
Right.
So if I'm at a job and it doesn't feel comfortable, then I run away. When I started at my job, it was very uncomfortable, right? I had people that were like, I'm not, I had somebody who was like, don't have your Bible out. They'll make you put it away. And to prove that that wasn't true, I started holding Bible. I started holding
You kept
Bible
it
study.
55th Street.
Yeah, I started having Bible studies
Got some
in
costers.
my office, right? I started having Bible studies in my office with the door open.
Come on.
Right? Because we did it before work hours.
Come
right?
on.
I know the rules. I know the contracts that I signed. I know the requirements. So you also have to know. You can't be out here breaking company rules, trying to evangelize, and then get mad when you get persecuted. Read the rule book that you signed as an employee and then know how to navigate around it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't just be reckless. But yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't
Let's reply to some of these super chats. I appreciate the super chats. I just want to thank you guys for being biblically logical. Sometimes it seems like during tribulations, Christians start acting in fear. Love you guys. I appreciate that. Let's see if there's a couple other ones.
Pumpkin eater.
Shout out to Alexis from Texas. She says she's starting her new job. This is getting her pumped. Amazing. Guys, I think the macro idea, man, is just serve. Like, go in and serve people. Go above and beyond. Don't say that's not on my job description. Love people, care about people, and you're going to be fine. He said, thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate you both. May God continue to bless your families. We appreciate you guys, man. And so again, when we're trying to give information, when we're trying to provide like linear steps, we understand there's exceptions to the rules. Don't trick yourself into always looking at the exception to the rule instead of the general principle that's being unpacked for you. That's what I'm saying. Like, we live in a reap and sow world. We live in a cause and effect universe. There's certain things that God wired a specific way. Yes, there's going to be variables and curveballs and all that kind of stuff. All right, all that. Yes, okay, I get it. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do what you can do. And by the way, and sometimes maybe you go and God has you in a dry season, but it develops character. You're in a toxic culture for a season, develop character, and then all of a sudden God will promote it. I mean, most of my jobs were like that, if I'm gonna keep it a buck. But you know what happened, Pastor Roy? Every time I was in a rough organization, a rough company, a dysfunctional company, I learned resilience and I learned better skills that stacked on top of each other. And then eventually I found my sweet spot. And it took a couple years, but eventually it took time. You know what I'm saying? It took time to get to where I was at. But the whole journey was amazing. Like, the journey in the process was amazing. I remember after I got this job, Pastor Roy, at the YMCA, I was supposed to be running their studio. They had this after-school program in Escondido, running a studio, super duper cool. And then like 3 weeks in, I was a brand newlywed. My hours got cut in half. So I was going to work at like 35 hours a week. Boom. Now I'm at 15 hours a week, right? So I'm like, damn, now I don't have health insurance, right? And then I stuck around, and then the job after that, I eventually left because I wasn't getting enough hours, and I got a job working with adults with developmental disabilities. And that job was hard, but it taught me to love and care for people, especially marginalized, disenfranchised people, developmentally disabled people who the world and societies forgot about. God did something in my heart because I was this logical, linear, you gotta do A, right? And so like every single thing I did that was hard, even if it was a job that wasn't, it taught me something, and I was able to extract value from it, even though I did it for 2 years. And then I worked at my church for 2 years. And that was hard. That was very hard. And that allowed me to learn all this stuff, right? And then eventually I went full-time with music. So even if you're in a tough position, that doesn't mean that God may not have you there for a season to teach you skills, to chisel away on your character, to develop you from the inside out, so that you could be a servant leader like Pastor Roy is talking about. Go ahead, Pastor Roy.
Yeah, and I have a video on my channel. It's called, I think it's from the drive-thru to the boardroom, and I talk about that whole process. One thing God's been able to do with my heart is in every job, whether it was driving a cab, making pizza, right, stacking books, taking orders in a drive-thru, there was something I learned from it, because I went there with the intention of learning, right? Like, I learned how to communicate with frustrated people at a drive-thru because I was the guy on the speaker. Right, so I was the muffled voice coming through, trying to understand your order. People hostile. I worked in the morning, so this is everybody trying to get their coffee and their biscuit, and I'm doing all this before class. But learning how to talk to people, I started my first company out of an interaction in the drive-thru, where a woman was like, "Man, you know how to handle people so well. Can I help find you something else to do?" And so I'm not, and I'm not talking about a very basic principle, right? But like this is how God calls us to function. Right, like God tells us to consider others more significant than ourselves. Right, God tells us to deal with those who will despitefully try to use us. I know my mentees love it and I hate it, and some of them are probably in the Patreon right now. I know Maya was in here earlier, but like they'll have a problem at work. Reach out to me about their boss, and I'll be like, I need you to love your boss, pray for them, and try to help them be successful, even though they're trying to get you fired.
Come on,
and they'll be like, what? Like I can't do that. That coworker that's trying to set you up, I need you to help them.
Come on.
I need you to help the people who are trying to destroy you.
Yeah.
And everybody that I've asked to do it, it's like they get promoted or they get another job offer because of an interaction. And like you said, then that season transitions, but never allow something to take you out of your character, because God's trying to develop your character, your Christian character, your heart, your wisdom, the way that you apply things. But when you're there willing to serve, and when you're there always with that mentality that, God, what are you trying to do in me and through me in this place? Right? Like not just who do you want me to, right? Who do you want? And this is the thing, right? This goes to the people in the chat, right? All the tribulation folk. You go into a building figuring out, and you just said this about the developmentally disabled that you work with, right? Who can I change here? When what we should be thinking is who here can change me.
Come on.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Come on.
who can, like, I spent like 5 or 6 years in the conservative evangelical Christian church that gave me a different heart. So by the time George Floyd happened, I wasn't going over the edge, because when I saw evangelical Christians responding, like I had spent years around people and loved people and I understood their heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I know what they're saying. I know it sounds jacked up. I know it sounds super racist, but like God prepared my heart for that. I didn't want to be in those churches. I wanted to leave, but I had to stay there and I didn't change them, right? But they changed me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I learned something that I could apply. So I think that's the thing that we've got to understand too. Even like you said, when you're in a season, it may only be temporary, but if we're just sitting there complaining and we're not saying, God, what are you trying to show me? What are you trying to build in me? What are you trying to develop in me? Because we all know when you fail a test, what happens? You got to retake the class.
Right.
So you keep going, you keep getting boss, that's a jerk. Because maybe God wants you to show love to a boss, right? God wants you to love your boss so that you know what it feels like, and then he'll promote you.
Come on.
When you can serve someone that's undeserving.
Woo.
Because as a vice president, I tell all of my people, my job does not exist without you.
Yeah.
If there weren't 220 people for me to lead, you don't need a vice president.
Yep.
Right? So I need you more than you need me, right? None of you need me to do your job every day. You can all go out, fix problems, install software, troubleshoot stuff. You don't need me at all. Yeah. So I need you. So that's an inverted pyramid.
Well,
you know
I mean, and go back to the inverted pyramid. What did you say? You said, I need you might need to be in a place where you're willing to serve someone that is undeserving, right? Yeah. And if that isn't a picture for the gospel, I don't know what is. The fact that we were not deserving, we were not worth serving, that we were rebelling, that we can listen to like all these messages and make yourself out to be the hero and make yourself out to be like Peter walking on water. The truth is, many of us will probably been the same folks crucifying Jesus to that cross. You were not deserving of that grace. You were not worth serving. You were not worth saving because you were pretty far gone. Yet God loved you, and Jesus came and served even when we did not deserve it, even when we were far gone, even when we were hell-bent on having our own way, to the point where humanity nailed Jesus to that cross, right, and spit on him, and then Jesus still in the midst of that says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do, and is still praying for them on the cross. Like, that's such a wild thing. And so it's like, if that ain't the upside down kingdom that Jesus came to establish with the way we are to lead, we are to be willing to serve, we are to be willing to have that desire to make our attitude like Jesus, right? Put on the attitude of Jesus, right? Who did not grasp equality with God something to happen, but that he laid down his life, becoming in the form of a servant. I'm paraphrasing that verse, forgive me, I'm not quoting it perfectly. And that is the beauty of the gospel. Like, that is the beauty of what this good news is, that it should affect how you then go out and work. It should affect how you treat your enemies at work, your boss that may feel like your enemy, your coworker that may feel like your enemy. A lot of times they may even be your enemy. They may be hostile to God. They may be an enemy of Christians, right? But that if you have that posture, and you may not change them, but they could change something in you, and it can remind you and reinforce that idea of the gospel, and that, man, we should serve people that aren't always worth serving. Why? Because Jesus first did it to us.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I see people at work, right, have like stuff like keep calm and chive off, or live, laugh, love. Put that in your cubicle, right? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. So all the people getting on your nerves, all the people you think are backbiting, all the people you think, right, forgive them, because they know not what they do, right? And then just, you know, like just love on people and be willing to serve them.
Amen. We're going to do this last question because I really got to go and I really got to pee and I'm missing bedtime, but that's okay because Pastor Roy Dockery's here. How does one improve on skills that are clearly enhanced by an individual's giftings? Not everyone can duplicate what y'all do. Okay, this is a great question. I'm going to let you go first because my take on this might be really off the wall. So you go ahead and tell me what you think about this.
I'm going to say that, like, I'm talking about people enhancing their gifting, right? What I'm asking people to do is to serve. Everyone is equipped to serve, right? We are called to love people, and if in a loving way you serve people, whether you like them, whether you don't like them, right? There's something you're capable of doing, and like you said, and I've talked to Kalechi, who I think is in the community as well, and I'm like, what is it at work that you love doing that nobody else loves doing? Kalechi is a finance guy, completely different background to me, completely different mindset. But like, there's something that you love to do, and God put that in you for a reason. So it's not about someone else's gifting and looking at how somebody else maneuvers. I tell, like, I ain't doing all of this. Like, this is Ruslan. Like, that's what he's doing. But at the same time, you have to understand what you're capable of doing and serve people in your capability. Yep. Right? And when you serve people in that capability, that's what I'm saying creates the opportunities and gives God glory as well. When you're doing that selflessly, like God gave, and the way that I always tell, and I even tell my kids, if God gave you the gift, then be willing to serve somebody else with it freely. Come on. Right? So it may not be YouTube, it may not be music, it may not be whatever, but like you have a gift, figure out, and I lead, and you know, I lead our outreach, our service ministry at our church. That's what I'm the pastor of. I'm literally the pastor of CARES Ministry, which is our service ministry. I have somebody serving that's knitting blankets, right? Because she had a heart that she wanted to give hand-knitted blankets to parents that just recently lost infants. And I'm like, absolutely, do that. Like, I'll find a hospital to give it to. I got contacts locally. Like, I'll get with the chaplain, right? Like, and that's her serving, right? And that's God opening that door. The chaplain's reaching out. There's great things happening at the hospital, but you just need to be willing to serve. So like, don't become prioritized on giftings. It doesn't matter what your gifting is. Like, you need to be open to serve. Yeah, that's such a good point. Serve where you're at. Serve with what you have. Right, lay down with what you have. Shout out to I think the name is Pumpkin. How do you say the name? Pumpkin Nita. She said this helped her with anxiety. And we're gonna pray before we get out of here. I'm gonna say this last thing, right? Individual giftings. And Pastor Roy may disagree with me. I'm gonna take a radical stance. I would say the vast majority of what we think is talent and giftings is just repeatable behavior over decades of time. Most of what we think is, he's so naturally talented at singing. No. He's just been singing since he was 3 years old, going to a church where they platformed kids very early on and was able to develop his pitch, right? It's not that, right? So yes, there's some genetic stuff there, but generally speaking, a lot of it is just deliberate behavior. And I would encourage you, look at books like Outlier, look at books like Mastery, look at what it creates, what it takes to actually develop a skill. And I'm not saying everybody's going to be Michael Jordan on the court or everybody's going to be this or everybody. I'm saying that don't project a self-limiting belief on yourself because you think it's mystical and magical. God definitely gives people gifts, but there's a lot of times where God may give you gifts by positioning you in his sovereignty and in his providence to recreate and practice something. I'll give you guys an example. My son is taking music lessons, right? So he went from just like understanding that he likes certain music, my music, right, to learning that there's 12 notes in a scale, to learning what sharps and flats are, to learning how to play chords, and now he wrote his first song. It's actually really fire. He did a song and there's a story to it. It's a Pokemon reference and his whole bit, right? And it's actually really good. Like I might sample it and turning it into a record, right? The issue is my son is 7 years old playing more advanced chords than I can as a 37-year-old man, right? And on the surface, you would look and say Ruslan has more talent than no, Levi's just worked harder and focused more on mastering piano. And you know how I know this? Because he can't keep a 4 count, Pastor Roy. He can't dance.
He doesn't have rhythm. Well, mom came over the other day. She started throwing on those Armenian music. She started dancing and this whole thing, right? And we literally could not get him to just move his feet to the beat. 1, 2, like he couldn't do it. And my niece who's 6, like is like a dancer. Like she could dance. Everybody's dancing, and my son was having trouble just keeping. It's not that he's more naturally talented at music. It's that he's been exposed to things and has been willing to put in the work to be able to play piano at a more advanced level than myself, right? Even though I've taken piano lessons, and it's just time under tension. That's all it is. So just be careful with some of this, like this limited thinking of like, I can't do this. Someone's natural gifting, man. There's your skill set, and usually the thing that's keeping you from where you would like to be in that next season of your life is a deficit in your skill set. How can you improve your skill set? And you could probably take your skills that you already have and add new skills on top of them, and add new skills on top of those. I'll give you guys an example. I was at my church. I started doing video announcements. We pivoted to live streaming. I learned about video switchers. Then took those video switchers, started doing my YouTube. Then we learned this whole projection thing that we got going on behind us. There's a YouTube tour coming. I learned that. Then I opened up a software called Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine is about building the same software they use to do the Mandalorian, right? I'm not afraid, and I'm just opening stuff up, building stuff in Unreal Engine. Same software they make movies on. Why? Because I'm curious. I'm willing to learn new things, and it's stacked on top of multiple little skills that I've picked up along the journey that I'm willing to try new things and not be afraid of stuff. And so usually when someone has a very unique skill set, it's just because they just kept stacking stuff on top of each other. They just kept practicing. They just kept trying. They kept learning. They kept showing up, even when they were the offbeat kid at the dance party. And that was the thing that I had to tell my son gently but truthfully, that son, you don't know how to dance. Bro, you don't know how to dance. You know, but that's okay, because you can learn. Because you play piano really well, you can learn how to dance too. You can learn how to dance too. You know what I mean? And that's what I would say, man, is yes, there's certain things that God just gives certain people graces. I agree. There's certain things that God positions you to learn in the providence of his timing. This may be one of those things where God may be, from what me and Pastor Roy have been talking about for the last hour, that God may be trying to take a limiting belief off of you and show you the possibility that we have in this world that we live in now that's so different, so different than the world that me and Pastor Roy grew up in. And maybe God is trying to show you that, and not to be afraid, and to be a bit more adventurous, and be a bit more curious, and be a bit more friendly. So anyway, I can talk about this stuff for hours. I'm sure you can too. Pastor Roy, close us out in prayer, man. And we're gonna get at it. Tell everybody about your YouTube channel, by the way, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, it's queued up. Pastor Roy Dockery on YouTube. Like I said, we got the Savage Truth Discord as well. If you look at any of my YouTube channels, the invite for the Discord is in there as well. And I'm sure somebody probably in the chat might have dropped it in the chat by now. But that's it, man. But yeah, let's pray it up, because I'm on East Coast time and it's 11 p.m. for me. But yeah. Heavenly Father, we thank you, God, just for an opportunity, God. We thank you for this platform, Father. We just thank you, and I pray, God, that you continue to bless Ruslan, God, not just in the development of his channel, God, the development of his family, God, the development of his ministry, God. That you continue to strengthen his voice, God. You give him confidence in the places that he would go, God. And that you continue to allow the things that he says and what he shares, God, and his perspective to just spark a conversation, God, to just challenge people to think and to look for a greater and a deeper understanding. God, I pray for everybody that's on the live stream right now, God. I pray for those that are dealing with limitations, God. Yeah. I pray for the one young lady that mentioned anxiety. There's probably more than one person starting a new job, God, that's making a transition, Father. I just pray for peace in their hearts right now, God. You told us not to be anxious for anything, God. We have to be mindful. We can be practical. We can be logical, God, but we don't need to be anxious, because we know that you will equip us, God, and that you will give us the self-control. You will give us the grace. But ultimately, God, you gave us a heart to serve, because in all of us, you place your love. And we know that above everything, God, that you loved us enough to die for us selfishly and sacrificially, God. So we know that that love is in us, God, and that love drives us to serve, God, that our faith drives us to action, God, and drives us to produce works, God. So we just thank you, God, in that you touch every person here, God, even though we have differences in beliefs, God, we have differences in perspectives, God, that we can all love one another, that we can serve one another, God, and that we can be a representation of your kingdom, God. Some might be a fist, some might be a hand, man, God, but we are all necessary to build the kingdom, God. So let us bring our tools just to your altar, God, and build what it is you would have for us here on earth as it is in heaven. We thank you. Love you. In Jesus' name.
Jesus' name, amen, amen, amen. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out. Check out Pastor Roy Dockery's channel. Be sure to subscribe here tomorrow. I'm going to be doing a stream on if Stephen Furtick clapped back at your boy. All right, so make sure you tune in, and we'll see you guys later. All right, peace.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. Be sure to check out the links in the description. There's a free Master My Habits course, but I put together with me and my Christian therapist, Dr. Rudy, a free Master My Devo, and a free Find Your Niche training if you're looking to get into the Christian YouTube space. And check out some of these other videos from me and YouTube recommended to you. All right, peace.